Steph Curry is suiting up this morning, but not for basketball. Instead, he's playing some golf, and it's all to benefit children. The first ever Stephen Curry Charity Classic is underway at Harding Park in San Francisco.
Sometimes life throws us curveballs when we least expect them. For one waitress, a simple act of kindness turned her whole world upside down. Meet Rachel, a hardworking young woman who spent her days serving customers at a busy diner in Oakland. She wasn't just any waitress. Rachel had a warm smile and a heart full of generosity. She believed in doing the right thing no matter what. One chilly afternoon, the diner was buzzing with its usual crowd. Among the faces, Rachel spotted someone who looked familiar. Dressed casually in a hoodie and jeans, it was none other than basketball superstar Steph Curry.
Please welcome back to The Late Show, four-time NBA champion and now Olympic gold medalist, Steph Curry.
He had stopped by for a quick meal before his next big game. Rachel couldn't believe her eyes. She wasn't just excited because he was famous. She admired him for his kindness and the inspiration he brought to people everywhere. Steph sat down quietly, hoping to enjoy a peaceful lunch. But soon, other customers began noticing him, and the whispers started spreading. Rachel knew what would happen next, a crowd gathering around him, disrupting his meal. So she made a decision. She discreetly helped him place his order, ensuring he got his food quickly and could leave without much fuss. Rachel thought she was doing the right thing. After all, what's wrong with showing a little kindness? But her manager didn't see it that way. By the end of her shift, she was called into the office and fired on the spot. No warnings, no explanations. Just like that, her job was gone. Rachel walked home that night with tears, questioning whether kindness was worth the cost. But little did she know, her story wasn't over. The next day, something incredible was about to happen, leaving her completely speechless and changing her life forever. Amara, a black waitress at Sonny's diner, never thought her life could change so quickly. She had no idea that one decision standing up for basketball legend Steph Curry would turn her world upside down. At 29, Amara had worked at Sonny's for 3 years. The diner was her second home, a place where she knew everyone by name. It sat in a quiet part of Berkeley near San Francisco and was a favorite spot for older locals. They came to enjoy coffee, pie, and basketball games on the small TV in the corner. Amara's friendly smile and caring nature made her a favorite among the regulars. Most evenings at Sonny's were predictable. Customers would chat about old times while Amara served their usual orders. But tonight was different. The bell above the door jingled, and Amara glanced up, expecting to see a familiar face. Instead, her heart skipped a beat. Walking in, dressed casually in a hoodie and sneakers, was Steph Curry, the Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors. Amara froze for a moment, unable to believe her eyes. It wasn't every day that a world-famous athlete walked into their small diner. Steph looked like he was trying to go unnoticed, but his presence lit up the room. The older customers at the counter turned to stare, whispering and craning their necks to confirm it was him. Amara's pulse quickened. She'd watched him on TV countless times, leading his team to victory. But she never imagined meeting him in person. Steph sat quietly at a table, hoping to enjoy his meal without being disturbed. Amara could tell he just wanted some peace. She decided to treat him like any other customer, kindly and respectfully. But little did she know that her choice to help him would lead to unexpected consequences. That night, everything in her life would change forever. The fact that Steph Curry, a celebrity, had come to their small diner was a big deal for Amara and the regulars. Many of them were huge basketball fans, and seeing such a famous player in their little spot felt surreal. Taking a deep breath to calm her nerves, Amara walked over to his table with her usual warm smile. "Good evening. What can I get for you tonight?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. Steph looked up and gave her a kind smile that immediately made her feel at ease. "Just a coffee black and maybe a slice of whatever pie you have," he said politely. "Coming right up," Amara replied, hiding the excitement fluttering in her chest. As she moved to the counter to prepare his order, she noticed the murmurs spreading through the diner. Some customers smiled with admiration, while others exchanged surprised glances. When she returned with the coffee and pie, she set them on the table and tried to act as though this were just another customer. "Here you go. Enjoy." "Thanks," Steph said, offering another friendly smile before turning to look out the window. Amara paused briefly, watching him. Despite his fame, there was something calm and humble about him. He didn't seem like someone seeking attention. Instead, he appeared lost in thought, maybe even a little tired. But not everyone shared Amara's admiration. Earl, one of the older regulars, was a die-hard Sacramento Kings fan, the Golden State Warriors' rivals. Earl was known for his outspoken nature and wasn't shy about voicing his opinions. As he stood up and headed towards Steph's table, Amara felt a wave of unease. "Excuse me," Earl said, his gruff voice cutting through the quiet conversations. "Aren't you that basketball guy, Steph Curry?" Steph looked up, still smiling politely. "Yes, that's me." Earl crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. "I've been reading about you," he said bluntly. "You make millions, but what do you do for folks who need it? Heard you're pretty stingy with all that cash." The diner fell silent as Earl's words hung heavy in the air. Amara felt her heart sink. What had started as an exciting moment was quickly taking an uncomfortable turn. Amara, who was clearing plates at the next table, froze when she heard Earl's words. She glanced over at Curry, whose calm demeanor showed no discomfort. "I try to give back where I can," Curry replied evenly. "I've supported education programs, built basketball courts for kids, and helped fund charities." Earl scoffed. "Sounds like a PR stunt to me. You big shots only care about your image." Murmurs spread across the diner, some customers nodding in agreement. Amara felt a surge of indignation. Earl's words were unfair and misinformed, and she couldn't stand by while someone she respected was being criticized. Summoning her courage, she stepped forward. "Earl," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside. "That's not true. Steph Curry has done more than most people could dream of. He's given scholarships to students who couldn't afford college, donated to disaster relief efforts, and supported mental health programs." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. Earl furrowed his brow. "And you believe all that? How do you know he's not just doing it for the headlines? Because actions speak louder than words," Amara countered. "I've read about the kids whose lives have changed because of his foundation."
The Currys, along with their Eat, Learn, Play Foundation, host their 10th annual Christmas with the Currys, creating a winter wonderland for Oakland families in need.
"He doesn't have to do any of that, but he does because he cares." Curry looked at her, surprise and gratitude flickering across his face. Amara continued, her voice gaining strength. "We live in a world where people with means don't always step up, but when someone like Steph does, it's not fair to tear them down." The diner buzzed with whispers again, some patrons appearing moved by her defense, while others remained skeptical. Earl huffed and returned to his seat, muttering under his breath. But the damage was done. Amara noticed Mr. Sullivan, the diner's owner, stepping out of the kitchen. His expression was stern. "Amara!" he said sharply, motioning her over. She approached, her heart sinking. "What was going to happen? What were you thinking?" he asked in a low voice. "You don't argue with customers, especially not regulars like Earl." "I wasn't arguing," Amara replied, her voice trembling. "I was standing up for someone who didn't deserve to be treated that way." Mr. Sullivan shook his head. "This is a business, not a debate club. Earl and the other regulars are the backbone of this place. If they're upset, we lose their loyalty. I think it's best if you find another job." Amara felt the words like a punch to the gut. "You're firing me for defending someone? I'll give you a few days to transition," Mr. Sullivan said, his tone final. Her vision blurred as tears welled up, but she held her head high, refusing to break in front of him. She glanced at Curry, who had risen and was watching the exchange with a look of regret on his face. "I'm sorry," Curry said quietly as she passed by, gathering her things. "Thank you for standing up for me. You didn't have to do that, but it meant a lot." Amara nodded, managing a weak smile. "You're welcome." The next morning, Amara woke up feeling like her world was crumbling down. Her usual enthusiasm for the day was replaced by a deep sense of loss. She had always loved working at Sonny's diner, the camaraderie with the regulars, and the comforting routine of brewing coffee and serving pancakes. Now, the sting of humiliation from the previous night felt fresh. Fired for standing up for someone she admired, Amara couldn't shake the disbelief that Mr. Sullivan had let her go so easily. Nor could she forget the way the regulars had looked at her, their silent judgment cutting deeper than Earl's words. Amara woke up the next morning with a heaviness in her chest that made it hard to breathe. The events of the previous night played over and over in her mind like a cruel loop. Sonny's diner had been her safe space for years, more than just a job. It was a second home. Yet in just a few moments she had lost it all. All because she couldn't stand to see a fellow human like her being bullied this time. It was the famous athlete Steph Curry. She thought doing the right thing mattered, but now she wasn't so sure, because it seemed like the world didn't care about what was right or wrong. Still, life didn't stop. Rent was due, and bills needed to be paid. Reluctantly, Amara prepared to head back to the diner one last time to collect her final paycheck. The thought of stepping into that space and facing those same people made her stomach churn with anxiety. She could already hear the whispers and see the disapproving glances. But she had no choice. She needed the money to keep herself afloat until she found another job. The morning air was crisp as she walked through the quiet streets of San Francisco. A golden glow from the rising sun bathed the city, but Amara couldn't appreciate it. Her heart was heavy, her thoughts clouded. She resolved to keep her head high no matter what awaited her. She had nothing to be ashamed of, she reminded herself. She had spoken the truth, even when it was hard. As she approached the diner, something unusual caught her eye. Parked right outside was a sleek black SUV. Its polished exterior gleamed in the sunlight, looking completely out of place against the backdrop of Sonny's modest, slightly weathered facade. Amara hesitated, confused, before pushing open the diner door. Inside, the usual hum of conversation was absent. Instead, an uneasy silence filled the room. Amara's eyes widened as they landed on Steph Curry, casually seated in one of the booths. Despite his relaxed posture, he exuded an air of quiet confidence that commanded attention. His simple attire, jeans, a sweatshirt, and a baseball cap didn't mask his star power. Behind the counter, Mr. Sullivan stood frozen, his face a mix of nerves and confusion. The regulars sat unusually subdued, their eyes flicking between Steph and Amara. The tension in the room was palpable. "Amara," Steph said as she entered. His voice was warm, calm, and inviting. "Can we talk?" Amara's heart pounded as she nodded and crossed the room. She could feel the weight of every pair of eyes on her, but for once, she didn't care. Following Steph to the booth, she slid into the seat across from him, trying to keep her composure despite her racing thoughts. "I couldn't stop thinking about what happened last night," Steph began, his tone calm but sincere. "You stood up for me when you didn't have to, and I respect that more than I can say." Amara blinked, unsure of how to respond. "I just thought you deserved someone to stand up for you," she said quietly, her voice almost trembling. "And that's exactly why I'm here," Steph continued, leaning forward slightly. "What you did took courage. It showed me the kind of person you are. Someone who stands up for what's right, even when it's hard. That's rare, and it's something I deeply admire." Amara tilted her head, confusion mingling with disbelief. "I don't understand," she said. "Why are you here?" Steph smiled, his expression kind yet determined. "My foundation is expanding. We're launching new programs to support underprivileged kids, improve access to education, and create opportunities for people who need a second chance. We need people who are passionate about making a difference, people like you." Amara's breath caught in her throat. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Completely," Steph said without hesitation. "I want you to join the team. It's not waiting tables, but it's a chance to be part of something bigger, to use your voice and your heart to help others." For a moment, Amara sat in stunned silence. The weight of his words, the sheer improbability of this offer, left her speechless. Tears welled up in her eyes as the reality began to sink in. Amara's heart ached as she woke up the next morning, the events of the previous night replaying in her mind like a never-ending loop. She had lost her job at Sonny's diner. the only place she had felt truly at home for years. The diner wasn't just a job to Amara, it was her comfort zone, her safe space, a place where she knew everyone by name and felt a part of the community. But in a single moment, all of that was taken away because she stood up for someone who didn't deserve to be mistreated. Now, she wasn't sure if doing the right thing mattered anymore. Life was still moving forward, rent needed to be paid, bills needed to be covered, and she needed to find a new job fast. As she stepped outside into the crisp morning air of San Francisco, the city was bathed in the golden glow of the rising sun, but Amara couldn't appreciate it. Her thoughts were clouded with worry and disappointment. She had to return to the diner one last time to collect her final paycheck, but the thought of stepping back into that space made her stomach churn with anxiety. She could already hear the whispers and see the disapproving glances. Yet she had no choice. She needed the money to keep herself afloat until she found another job. As she approached the diner, something unusual caught her eye. A sleek black SUV parked right outside. It was shiny and polished, looking completely out of place against the diner's modest, slightly weathered exterior. Amara hesitated for a moment, confused, before pushing open the diner door. Inside, the usual hum of conversation was absent, replaced by an uneasy silence that made her heart race with anticipation. Amara's eyes widened when they landed on Steph Curry, seated casually in one of the booths. Despite his relaxed posture, he exuded an air of quiet confidence that demanded attention. He was wearing simple attire jeans, a sweatshirt, and a baseball cap, but even so, he still carried a star power that filled the room. Mr. Sullivan, the diner's owner, stood frozen behind the counter, his face a mixture of nerves and confusion. The regulars sat unusually subdued, their eyes flicking between Steph and Amara, as if unsure how to react to this unexpected visit. The tension in the room was palpable. Steph spoke first, his voice warm, calm, and inviting as he stood up when she entered. "Amara," he said, "can we talk?" Amara's heart pounded as she nodded and crossed the room. For once, she didn't care about the weight of everyone's eyes on her. Following Steph to the booth, she slid into the seat across from him, her thoughts racing. "I couldn't stop thinking about what happened last night," Steph began, his tone calm but sincere. "You stood up for me when you didn't have to, and I respect that more than I can say." Amara blinked, unsure of how to respond. "I just thought you deserved someone to stand up for you," she replied quietly, her voice almost trembling. Steph smiled, a mixture of gratitude and determination on his face. "That's exactly why I'm here. What you did took courage. It showed me the kind of person you are, someone who stands up for what's right, even when it's hard. That's rare, and it's something I deeply admire." Amara tilted her head, her confusion mingling with disbelief. "I don't understand," she said. "Why are you here?" Steph's smile widened. "My foundation is expanding," he continued. "We're launching new programs to support underprivileged kids, improve access to education, and create opportunities for people who need a second chance. We need people who are passionate about making a difference, people like you." Amara's breath caught in her throat. "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Completely," Steph said without hesitation. "I want you to join the team. It's not waiting tables, but it's a chance to be part of something bigger, to use your voice and your heart to help others." For a moment, Amara sat in stunned silence. The weight of his words, the sheer improbability of this offer, left her speechless. Tears welled up in her eyes as the reality began to sink in. She had lost her job, but in its place, she was being offered an opportunity beyond anything she'd ever imagined. "I don't know what to say," she whispered finally, her voice thick with emotion. "Say yes," Steph replied, flashing a grin that made her laugh through her tears. Amara nodded, her resolve finally breaking into a wide, tearful smile. "Yes, absolutely yes." Steph reached across the table, shaking her hand and sealing the deal. Around them, the diner remained eerily quiet. The regulars who had once judged her so harshly now sat stunned into silence. Amara couldn't help but glance at Earl, whose expression was a mix of disbelief and what looked like grudging respect. Mr. Sullivan, meanwhile, stood rigid behind the counter, his jaw clenched tightly as he processed what was unfolding. His face betrayed a hint of guilt, but Amara didn't dwell on it. Her focus was on the future. As Steph rose to leave, he turned back to Amara. "I'll have someone from my team reach out to you today to get things started. Thank you again for what you did. It meant more than you know." The bell above the door chimed as he walked out, the sound echoing through the diner like the closing of one chapter and the start of another. Amara sat for a moment, trying to steady her breathing. Then she stood with a firm resolve and walked to the counter to collect her paycheck. Mr. Sullivan handed it to her with guilt written all over his face. "I know I shouldn't have let you go yesterday," he said grudgingly, "but I'm sorry for how badly I treated you." Amara nodded, her eyes welling up with tears again. "It's okay," she said, her voice soft and steady. "I'm just glad I stood up for what was right." Amara met his gaze steadily. "You taught me a valuable lesson," she replied simply. "Sometimes standing up for what's right is more important than keeping a job." With that, she turned and stepped into the sunlight, her heart light with hope. In the weeks that followed, Amara joined Steph Curry's foundation and threw herself into work that felt meaningful and fulfilling. She traveled to communities in need, helped organize educational programs, and met countless individuals whose lives were transformed by their efforts. For the first time, she felt that her voice and actions truly mattered. Looking back, she realized that losing her job at Sonny's Diner wasn't the end she had feared. It was the beginning of a life filled with purpose. That one-chance encounter with Steph Curry changed everything, proving that sometimes standing up for what's right opens doors to a brighter future. As Amara walked away, she couldn't help but feel a sense of liberation and excitement for what lay ahead. The journey she had started was no longer about simply keeping a job. It was about finding purpose and making a difference. Steph Curry's offer was more than just an opportunity. It was a validation that standing up for what was right could open doors to a future filled with possibilities. For the first time, Amara was doing work that mattered, connecting with people who were making real changes in their communities. Looking back, she knew it wasn't just about defending a famous athlete. It was about standing up for herself, believing in her values, and trusting that she had something meaningful to offer. This experience taught her that life doesn't always go as planned, but sometimes setbacks can lead to unexpected and wonderful opportunities. Losing her job was just a stepping stone towards a new beginning, a chance to create a life with purpose, where her actions could truly make a difference. Amara's story is a reminder that we all have the power to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. It's about choosing to be brave, to believe in ourselves, and to follow our passions, even if it means stepping out of our comfort zones. So, what's next for Amara? We'll have to wait and see, but one thing's for sure, she's on a path that's not just about survival, but about thriving. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.